Damn, you sad, Day. And I know how you're feeling, man. And if I had my bong on me right now, dude, I'd let you talk till you choke.
Justin Pierce had a way of making even a small role feel big. When he appeared on Next Friday, he brought the same street-style authenticity he carried in everyday life. But the real question is, how did a kid who made such a mark on pop culture end up at just 25? That's the part people never talk about. His rise, his struggle, the people who used him, and what the industry took from him before he even got a chance to grow up.
Yo, don't drink my soda. Punk.
Justin Pierce's story didn't start in New York, even though that's where everyone remembers him. He was actually born in London and then moved to the Bronx when he was still young. His mother was the steady presence in his life. His father, on the other hand, was barely in the picture. There's still mystery around him because Justin didn't talk much about him. What's clear is that he didn't have a real father figure guiding him. Meanwhile, things got worse when his parents split up. That was the moment he needed something stable, and instead, the whole family fell apart. He moved out young, way too young, and ended up in Washington Heights. The place he lived in became legendary among the people who knew him. They called it the Dungeon. It was literally a basement, a beat-up, low-ceiling basement filled with kids trying to survive their own lives. It was dirty. It was loud. It was unsafe in every sense of the word. But for Justin, it was a refuge. Not because it was nice, but because nobody judged him there. Everyone was broken in their own way. The Dungeon was the kind of place where someone might be drawing in one corner, stealing food in another, nodding off in another, a mix of creativity and chaos. You had kids dreaming big while living in the worst circumstances. That kind of environment shapes you fast. Justin got caught up in thefts. He skipped school constantly. He was arrested multiple times for marijuana and heroin possession. Not because he was trying to be cool or act hard. It was survival. When you're raised in a place that feels like it's falling apart, you look for whatever keeps you going. Some kids find sports. Some kids find mentors. Justin found the streets. But the same streets that chewed him up also gave him something the world wanted: style, attitude, and fearlessness. For Justin, the place where all of that came together was Washington Square Park. If you grew up in New York in the 90s, you know the park wasn't like it is today. It was wild. You had skaters, hustlers, artists, college kids, and every kind of stranger you could imagine. It was one of the few places where you didn't have to explain who you were. That's where Justin really found his identity. Skating wasn't a hobby for him. It gave him access to a lifestyle that made him feel like someone. Zoo York noticed him pretty fast. Back then, Zoo York wasn't a big company yet. It was a crew, a movement, a group of New York kids who wanted to build something that showed East Coast skate culture for what it really was. They had their mixtapes, their gritty videos, their downtown energy, and Justin fit right into it. He looked like the kind of kid brands tried to copy but never got right. He didn't pretend to be street, he was street, and that swagger caught more than skateheads' eyes. Justin wasn't just another skater hanging around Washington Square Park. He was part of something bigger that was forming around him without anyone realizing it at the time. This was the early Supreme era, long before the brand turned into the billion-dollar machine it is today. Back then, it was just a small downtown shop with a handful of kids who looked like they belonged nowhere and everywhere at the same time. Justin was one of those kids. He wasn't an influencer the way we think of influencers now. There were no phones, no algorithms, no strategy. He was what people now call analog influence. Kids like Justin gave brands like Supreme their entire look. They were the ones who created the attitude and style other companies later tried to copy. The sad part is how little he got out of it. Justin had the kind of cultural value companies would kill for today, but he never got to monetize any of it. He made the style, but he was broke. He carried the attitude, but someone else made the profit. That's the grim irony of his story. But then came the intervention that changed everything.
I met Larry in a park, and in that park, and that's kind of where we all were friends, and we're all kids, and that was really very close to, it's basically that was the thing. And that was that was all those people were around us, we were all friends, and Larry wanted to tell a movie from the inside out.
Larry Clark didn't find Justin in a casting room. He found him outside with his other friends, doing what he did every day. Clark was looking for real kids who lived the life he wanted to capture. And Justin fit that better than anyone. Clark cast him in Kids, not because Justin trained for the role, but because the role was almost an extension of who he already was. When the movie came out, critics noticed him right away. They said he felt real on camera in a way professional actors rarely do. That authenticity turned into instant praise. He ended up winning the Independent Spirit Award for Best Debut, which is a big deal for someone who had never acted a day in his life.
And the Spirit Award goes to Justin Pierce for Kids.
I'm supposed to say something right now. Thank you. I'd like to thank my mom first, obviously. Definitely. My father, secondly. Larry Clark, thirdly. Harmony Korine for writing this. Who this award really goes to, obviously. Because I wouldn't have said nothing that he didn't write.
As soon as Kids blew up, a different kind of conversation started around the film. The movie made real money. It became a cultural moment. But the kids who carried it didn't get rich. Most were paid the bare minimum. Meanwhile, adults behind the project turned it into a career boost. For kids like Justin, who were already living rough lives, there wasn't any safety net. No one sat them down to talk about how to handle sudden attention or money or fame. No one explained the emotional part. Once the movie wrapped, they were basically on their own again, except now they had a level of visibility they didn't know how to manage. They were famous enough to be recognized, but not supported enough to be protected. That's a dangerous place to be for any young actor, especially one with Justin's background.
You ever take one of these things out with your teeth?
Steeps. You girls don't bleed yet, that's why.
After Kids, Hollywood saw something in Justin and wanted to bring him to the West Coast. So he moved to Los Angeles. And this is where things shifted in a big way. The first problem was simple. He didn't have his people anymore. He went from a world where he blended in perfectly to a world where everything felt staged and structured. Hollywood didn't know what to do with him, but they knew exactly what they wanted to use. They wanted the street kid look. They wanted the unpredictable energy. They wanted the realness, but they didn't want him to grow past that. And the roles he got reflected that. He was pushed into the same parts again and again. The troubled teen, the thief, the reckless young guy, the character who feels cool at first but quickly becomes a cage. Justin tried to build a life outside of all of this, but Hollywood kept seeing him as the same person from Kids. They didn't want the adult version of him. They wanted the version they could package. Every script that came in looked familiar. Same attitude, same personality, same story. And every time he took one of those roles, it reminded him that the industry didn't see him growing. Then came the mainstream hit that most people know him from, Next Friday.
My dad finds out I got fired again, man. He's gonna kick my...
This was the role that took him from being known in indie circles to being recognized everywhere. When he landed the role of Roach, it gave him a kind of exposure he'd never had before. Next Friday was a huge hit. It reached a massive audience. People who had never seen Kids suddenly knew Justin as the super chill stoner sidekick with the long hair and wide smile. It was a lighter role and way more fun than anything he'd done before. Roach wasn't a character who lived in the shadows of rough neighborhoods or broken families. He was just a spaced-out kid trying to enjoy life. That was a big shift for Justin. It showed he could be funny, relaxed, and likable in a totally different way. And audiences loved it. A lot of people only know Justin from this movie. And that shows how far his range went when he was given the chance to play something other than the troubled street kid. But even with all that success, there was a weird disconnect. Critics didn't really take him seriously because the movie was a comedy and wasn't considered important. They brushed him off as someone who just showed up to play himself, which wasn't true.
How many of us have them friends? Ones we can depend on. Friends. Shut the up!
On the outside, it looked like a win. But on the inside, the old cracks were still there. People who knew Justin always said he had an old soul. He carried a lot of weight in the way he talked, even when he was young. He had been through enough in his childhood that fame couldn't fix it. It didn't matter how many people recognized him or how many roles he got. That kind of pain doesn't disappear because a movie does well. Justin still used substances to numb things. He wasn't the reckless kid looking for a thrill. He was someone trying to patch over emotional wounds that had never healed. There was also the trip to Sweden, which people close to him remember clearly. He spent time with friends, skating and hanging out, but late at night he would open up about things he usually kept quiet. He talked about not having a father. He talked about growing up in a broken home. He talked about the parts of his life that followed him even after he reached success. Friends said there was a heaviness in him, a darkness that didn't match the playful guy he was during the day. That trip showed people around him that something was wrong. Fame wasn't helping. Hollywood wasn't helping. Moving across the country didn't make anything better. Justin was dealing with the same pain he'd always had, just under a bigger spotlight. All of that pressure resulted in a final trip to Las Vegas. In July 2000, he went to Las Vegas for work. He checked into the Bellagio, a far cry from the basements and skate parks where he came from. This was supposed to be the moment when his life was finally stabilizing. He had a studio hit behind him, people in Hollywood were finally taking him seriously, and he had more opportunities coming. For most people on the outside, things looked good, but on July 10th, when he didn't show up for dinner, people around him started to worry. When hotel staff checked his suite, they found him hanging. The police ruled it a by hanging almost immediately. They found 2 notes, but the contents were never made public. They were kept private for the family. Whatever he wrote in those notes, the world never got to see. The thing that made it even harder to process was the timing. He passed away at the height of his career. He had just been seen by millions of people. He had money coming in. He had respect from fans. He had visibility, but none of that filled the emptiness he carried. The pain he grew up with didn't disappear because he booked a hotel suite at the Bellagio. This was the part most people never understand about stories like his. Success doesn't fix old wounds. Opportunity doesn't heal childhood trauma. Fame doesn't replace a father who was never there, or a home that never felt safe. His memorial service was held at St. Patrick's Old Cathedral in New York. People from all parts of his life came together. He was buried at Gate of Heaven Cemetery. It was a heavy moment for everyone who had watched him grow, fall, rise, and struggle all at the same time. People cried, not just because he was gone, but because they knew how hard he fought to stay alive. Some of his co-stars said they never imagined he would go out like that. Others looked back on conversations with him and realized the signs were there, buried in jokes or late-night talks. Then something darker entered the conversation, the idea of the kid's curse.
I worked with an incredibly emotionally producer. Even talking about it now, my face gets hot thinking of it.
Justin was the first major cast member to die young, but years later, Harold Hunter would too. Both started from hard places. Both blew up suddenly. Both struggled with substances and depression. People started connecting the dots and blaming the film. It became a narrative. This movie was cursed, and everyone involved was doomed. But that story doesn't really help. Instead of digging into what the kids actually went through, people use the word curse as a shortcut. But blaming a curse hides a bigger truth about exploitation and responsibility. A lot of people who worked around kids and documented its impact later on started asking tough questions. Why were the young cast members underpaid when the adults behind the film made careers off it? Why was there no long-term support for kids who came from unstable homes, complicated family situations, and environments full of risk? Why were these young people thrown into adult-level fame with zero guidance on mental health, finances, or stability? Documentaries like We Were Once Kids looked directly at that. They pointed out that many of the actors had rough backgrounds and weren't protected on set or afterwards. They were praised for being raw and authentic, but they were also pushed into scenes and situations that didn't give them the emotional safety they needed. The film turned their real lives into something to watch, but it didn't help them with the fallout. Investigators and writers talked about how culture likes to romanticize street kids and gritty realness. People enjoy the aesthetic, the clothes, the slang, the attitude, but ignore the actual pain behind it. Justin was one of those kids. His life became content, his look became branding, his personality became a movie character. But when the cameras turned off, he went back to dealing with trauma on his own. This is a pattern in Hollywood. Find young kids, use their real background to make a project feel authentic, and then let them figure out the consequences alone. It happened to Justin, it happened to Harold, it happens to a lot of young actors who come from unstable homes. The industry takes what it needs and doesn't stick around to help them survive what comes next.
I gotta think of a way to get this money by tomorrow.
Huh?
I gotta think of a way to get, I gotta think of a way to get this money by tomorrow.
You can sell your Beamer.
Justin Pierce didn't live long, but the impact he made stayed way past his years. People still recognize him without even saying his name. Supreme has used his old photos in tributes. Archival clips of him skating around downtown pop up all the time. And photographers like Ari Markopoulos captured him in those raw, everyday moments that later turned into snapshots of a whole era. He became a visual marker for what the 90s felt like, especially in New York. Even kids today who weren't alive when he was skating around Washington Square Park still share his pictures online. His style, his attitude, and the way he moved through the world are still copied and admired. His roles live on in two very different ways. Roach from Next Friday is the version of him that everyone in mainstream pop culture remembers. It's the fun side of him. On the other hand, the character he played in Kids, Casper, lives in indie film history. That role is dark, heavy, and complicated. It shows the real pain behind the life he came from. What makes his legacy even more complicated is how the market treats him now. His look gets used in fashion, mood boards. His energy gets recycled in ads and streetwear campaigns. Brands reference him because he represents authentic edge. But behind that image was a life full of struggle, trauma, and moments that never got resolved. His face and vibe are valuable now, but they come from a childhood that cost him so much. That's the part people tend to forget. Justin's story asks a simple question. How many more young talents have to fall through the cracks before the system changes? His life is a reminder that behind every real character we love, there's an actual person who needs care, guidance, and support. And the industry should never forget that. What do y'all think? Did Justin Pierce get the love and protection he deserved? Or was he another kid the industry chewed up? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more such videos.